will present to you evidence that will shake the foundations of the evolutionary worldview. I'm standing here in the Wadi Peretsim. It's on the southwest corner of the Dead Sea in Israel. Behind me are the marl deposits. At one time, the Dead Sea would have been literally hundreds of feet higher than we are today. And what you see behind me are the beautiful deposits of swirling water trapped, frozen in time by the turbulent waters that at one time were here. As you can see, these layers would have been twisting and turning as they were deposited by the water that was flowing here. As a matter of fact, what I want to talk with you about is a worldwide flood that occurred only 4,350 years ago. At the very beginning of the flood, it says the fountains of the great deep, the springs of waters burst forth, broke open. These are the common English translations, but that's not really what it says in Hebrew. You have to understand that I'm a full-time missionary. I travel on 5 continents. I work in 20 languages around the world. And because of that, I'm very deeply concerned about something, which is I'm much more concerned about an interpretation, a concept. Not a spoken translation, but an interpretation by concept is much more important than a translation by word. And so what is the concept? What is the concept that is being brought to us here in the Hebrew language? Well, actually what it says in the Hebrew language is the waters cleaved. The waters cleaved. We still use the word to cleave today in a variety of ways, but one of the meanings of the word is to come to a knife edge. To cleave means to come to a knife edge. And so what is the concept of what it says in the Bible? It really says this: the waters knifed through from below. Now with that in mind, I brought something with me that I want to share with you. It's a 3-dimensional globe of the earth. But it's a very special globe because it has no water. You've seen school globes, you've seen flat wall maps of the world, and, well, when you see these, sometimes there's just the boundaries outlined of countries, states, provinces, territories. Usually, though, when you see blue, it's just ocean surface, as you see behind me. Why don't evolutionists want me to see what's on the bottom of the ocean? You see, we've known what's on the bottom of the ocean now for over 60 years. We really know what's there. But there's a very good answer to the question. The reason that evolutionists do not want you to see what's on the bottom of the ocean is because if you could see what was on the bottom of the ocean, you'd start to ask questions they don't want to have to answer. Before we take a look at the globe, I just want to remind you of a couple of pieces of terminology. First of all, how many of you remember something called a continental shelf? What they taught you about in school, the continental shelf? Continental shelf is where the land comes down to sea level, but then the land continues out under the water, but it's shallow. Then you get to the edge of the continent and it goes 2 miles straight down. Now, let's just take a look at a globe that has no water, because you can learn a lot from a globe that has no water. Now let's just take a look at Florida, where I live. And west of Florida, here, if you go from Tampa Clearwater, Naples, Florida, along the west coast of Florida, you can go 100 to 110 miles west into the Gulf of Mexico, and you're still in just 60 to 200 feet of water. But when you get out there about 100 to 120 miles, it just goes straight down. Here we see the continental shelf going around the edge of the Gulf of Mexico, and in the center we have this big empty hole in the ground with a flat sand bottom 2 miles down right in the middle. Now, in the United States, we have a little river you might have heard of. It's called the Mississippi. Well, the Mississippi River has two major nicknames. First of all, because evolutionists say it's millions and millions of years old, well, one of the nicknames for the Mississippi River is Old Man River. But there's another nickname for the Mississippi River, too. It's also called the Big Muddy. And there's a really good reason for that. You see, every hour, on average, throughout the year, the Mississippi River carries 16 to 18,000 tons of mud into the Gulf of Mexico. That's what's called the Big Muddy, right? Now, when the Mississippi River gets to the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi River slows down. When it slows down, well, of course, the mud precipitates at the mouth of the Mississippi. And what it does is it makes a big half cone of mud up against the side of the continent. And we can see it. If you'll take a look at the map, here's the mouth of the Mississippi at New Orleans. Here, on the map, it says Mississippi Fan, but this is the mud at the mouth of the Mississippi. This is the half cone up against the side of the continent. Now, would it be of any interest for anybody here to know that there's only 4,500 years worth of mud at the mouth of the Mississippi River? If evolutionists were telling the truth, and the Mississippi River really were millions of years old, today the entire Gulf of Mexico would be completely filled in. And there's only 4,500 years worth of mud at the mouth of all the great rivers, as I will show you. So I guess they're wrong about the Mississippi being millions of years old. Another thing, too. Now, how many of you remember those big old words, plate tectonics? How many of you are more familiar with the terminologies continental drift? The fact of the matter is, it's really very much the same thing. It's an idea taught mostly by evolutionists that at one time the continents all used to fit together in a big supercontinent referred to as Pangaea. And evolutionists have said this big supercontinent called Pangaea broke apart 120 million supposed years ago. That the continents have been drifting slowly and gradually apart for the last 120 million years. And they'll say the continents are moving apart at the rate of 2 inches per year for the last 120 million supposed years. And that's why we have the thousands of miles across the Atlantic today. All of you have seen public school globes. All of you have either noticed for yourself or you've had somebody point out to you, a teacher pointed out to you, the continents actually do in the Atlantic look like they fit together. Is that correct? I mean, if you take a look at the coast of South America, it does sort of kind of look like it would fit into Africa. Agreed? But let me ask you a question. If you wanted to know how well the continents fit together, would you really want to take a look at where sea level is today, or would you want to take a look at the edge of the continent? Looking at this three-dimensional graphic of an ocean, we can clearly see that sea level today is 200 to 300 feet above the actual edge of the continent. Normally, the real edge of the continent lies hidden below the water surface. Using this graphic, we can easily see that the continents fit together in the past. Well, I'm going to ask you to come down with me to Argentina. On the way to Argentina,